Hi, everybody. It's Mark Cooper Smith, and I have put together a top 10 list of 10 ways that you can make sure you look your best and you can be your best when you are on video chats online, or even if you're creating some short videos online as well. If you're anything like me, you've been spending way too much time, or let's put it this way, a lot of time online, whether it's on Zoom calls with colleagues at work for meetings, for presentations, just getting your work done, or catching up with friends and family, evenings, weekends, whenever it is, or using some of the other platforms that we're all using as well. I mean, I've become expert in Microsoft Teams, in Skype for Business, as well as the old regular Skype, in Whereby, and in a host of others. So there's all of these video platforms out there. And the tips that I'm going to give you right now are pretty much relevant for just about all of them. As you know, your mileage may vary just a little bit, but let's go ahead and get started. Now, before I start sharing with you my top 10 list, one of the questions I get a lot is, what equipment am I using? And what does my desktop look like? And in this case, my physical desktop. So I just took a picture and I thought I would share with you the equipment I'm using and what my desktop looks like. So let me share screen with you on that. I'm going to be sharing screen and coming off screen a lot. And here's a photo of my desktop right here. And if you take a look at my desktop, you'll see I have a couple of monitors. This is a big double wide monitor, so it gives me a couple of screens. My laptop here, this right here is the camera that I'm looking into. It's a Logitech 900 series high definition webcam. It also has stereo microphones, although I'm not using that. I'm going to talk about sound a little bit later. And it's surrounded by a ring light. And this is a ring light. It came with a tripod. It has various tones from a bright white to a more natural light with better tones. That's what I'm using right now. A little bit more flattering, a little less stark and harsh. And of course, it goes up and down. So as far as intensity. So you want to get a good ring light. It also lessens the shadows that we have on our faces as well with that ring light. And look right at it. You can see I've got a few other lights over here. So that further floods the wall in front of me and gives me a nice even light without it being too bright, so that when the camera's on me, I have nice regular light on my face, which works well. By the way, I'm using my hands a little bit, and you'll probably get a sense during this video that I'm standing up. I love doing videos. I love teaching classes, giving talks standing up, so I can move around a little bit. I can use my hands. It feels natural. So I'm at a stand-up desk as well. So it lowers when I have other work to do. But when I'm doing things like this, I like to stand up. Right in the middle here, I have my microphone. This happens to be a blue Snowball microphone. I've had this mic for years, not very expensive, probably $60 or $70. They have a blue is the name of is the brand, a Blue Yeti, a little over 100, really nice microphone. So I like that line of mics. And my particular microphone I have on one of these articulating stands. In fact, if you look at the picture of me in the corner, you'll see it's on a stand that allows me to move it around. So I really like that from a microphone standpoint. It's not in my way on the desktop, gets out of the way. So that works well. My Logitech camera, under $100. My ring light, maybe 75 on Amazon, with a nice tripod as well. So that's what my desktop looks like, in case you're wondering what the equipment is and you want to outfit yourself with something above just the webcam and microphone that's attached to your laptop. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And I'm going to move and start to share my top 10 list now. Now, one of the things I don't really love about Zoom, but it's just the way it's structured, is when you share screen, you move into a teeny little postage stamp up in the corner. And there are a couple of times when I'll want to draw your attention to what I look like, and I'll let you know when that is. Otherwise, you'll see my content when I'm sharing screens. So when I share screen, here I go. It's always a nice idea, by the way, if you are sharing screens and looking around, to say, okay, now I'm looking to share screen. Where's my top 10 list? There it is. And hopefully you're taking a look at Mark's top 10 list, how to look and be your best on video calls. So my number one, item is get the lighting right. So I say, look, well-lit face, no bright lights. Also, don't have bright lights behind you. You may notice over my shoulder here, I have a window. I've actually got a few windows on this wall. I have the shades drawn so I don't get a lot of light coming in. Otherwise, there'd be this big bright light behind me, and I might just be a black shadow with this kind of voice coming out of the shadow. You want to make sure you're front lit, and out of courtesy to the folks that you're dealing with, not have that big bright light behind you. Number two, frame your face nicely or yourself nicely. Typically, you want to have 30 to 50%, a third to half of the screen, at least vertically, taken up by your face. If we do the math, well, I would say about half of the screen is taken up by my face. So my face is big, but hopefully not too big and huge, and nicely framed side to side and up and down. If I move back, and you'll hear that, you know, sometimes you'll see people that are down in the corner here, or they've got their faces cut off. You do want to take a look at yourself, make sure that you're nicely framed and that you're big enough in the screen as well. My next, number three, is use an appropriate background. So this happens to be my home study. So I've got a nice bookcase behind me, a little bit of art. You don't want it to be too distracting. Hopefully my background is nice and kind of with the books, aligns with what I do teaching at UC Berkeley. But the other thing that a lot of people are doing is using virtual backgrounds these days. And there are some do's and don'ts on virtual backgrounds. So I'm going to take a little detour and talk about virtual backgrounds as well. So I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to go ahead and use a virtual background on Zoom. And now you can download a lot of virtual backgrounds. You can upload your own photos. You can upload your own videos. I want to share with you a photo I took last year when I was in Paris and was at the Eiffel Tower right after a rainstorm. And there was this perfect rainbow. You can see it behind me, which I was able to see both ends of along with the Eiffel Tower. And then you see the Eiffel Tower. I'll step back. You can look at my hand though. I've got these artifacts around my hand. I'm kind of ghosting and disappearing a little bit. When I come here, my head is now stuck to the top if you look up here. So there's some issues of using the virtual backgrounds that can be difficult, whether it's videos or whether it's photos. However, there's a way to deal with that really effectively if you like your virtual backgrounds. So now I'm going to take a moment and stop sharing or stop my virtual background, and I'm going to pull down my green screen. So I've got a green screen here. I love Amazon. I bought this from Amazon. It's about $100. It pulls down. I just went ahead and attached it to the ceiling here. You can much less expensively just get cloth to put on the back wall as well. But let me share with you that same photo now that I have my green screen up. And if I step back and I start moving around, you can see it looks very natural. I feel kind of like the weatherman, right, on TV. So it looks natural. There's not a lot of artifacts. If I come up, remember how my head kept getting stuck to the top? That works fine as well. And the other reason why a green screen is particularly nice these days is because there's increasingly a number of pieces of software when I'm recording content that allow me to put slides over my shoulder. If I want to move over here and have a slide or a slide deck over there, it lets me superimpose them. So if you want to use virtual backgrounds or do those different types of superimpositions, you might want to think about getting a green screen. But we're going to get rid of the green screen for now. Let me go ahead and get rid of the virtual background. Green screen gone, and I'm back. Let's go back now. Let me share the rest of my tips with you. So I'm going to share screen, look at my top tips. You should be seeing those now. What's number 4? My next tip is keep your camera at eye level. So you want a good quality camera. We talked about that. Just clean the lens, especially if it's your laptop camera. You don't want it to be smudged. And then you want to look into the camera. And that takes some discipline. A lot of times, if I were looking at the content I'm reading from, I would be down here looking, or I'd be over here looking at some of these things. So it takes some discipline. And the other thing you can do is drag your content on your screens up to near where your webcam or your external webcam may be. So at least that way, you're still looking pretty much at the camera. That's a way to really replicate the kind of eye contact that we expect face-to-face, really helpful. So try and discipline yourself to look into the camera. Next, manage your webcam. So one of the ways that you can think about managing your webcam is there's a number of applications that you can get that are add-on applications that allow you to zoom in, zoom out, change the exposure. With my Logitech webcam, I have something called Logitech G Hub. And for those of you who have Logitech devices, it's actually an add-on that's for gaming, for multiplayer gaming. I really like it for applications like this. So if you take a look, in fact, I'll stop sharing for just a moment. So if you take a look at where I am right now, if I want to zoom in on me, I can zoom in a lot, or I can zoom way out as well. So I have that control right at my fingertips to be able to do that. Let's say I want to move myself around on the screen if I'm sitting down. It gives me the ability with some natural arrows to basically control my camera digitally, which is great. The other thing it lets me do is manage my exposure. So let's say I say, oh, I want to be brighter. Don't we all want to be a little brighter, right? So I can do that. Or I can have more color saturation if I want to be really saturated. Or let's say I want to be much more black and white. It gives me a lot of control in that way, in a number of those different ways, to be able to manage my image. Super helpful. Let me be a little more saturated. There I am, kind of back to natural, or at least close to that. So let me go back, share screens, and continue with my top 10 list here. So that's called Logitech G Hub, which I wrote on my top 10 list, and there you see it. Next, number 6, sound good. So you do want to sound as good as you can. You know how hard it is when you're on one of those video chats and you can barely hear somebody, or the sound is muffled, or it just sounds bad, or it's very faint. So you want a high quality microphone. And typically the microphones that come in your laptop are just really not that good. If you think the cameras are bad, the microphones are worse. Some of the cameras, like the Logitech 900 series I have, actually come with built-in microphones, and they're okay. So if you don't want to spring for a mic, get a camera that at least has a decent microphone attached to it. The Logitech happens to have stereo microphones in it. Or go ahead and spring for something like the Blue Snowball or the Blue Yeti or other microphones. And when you first get on a call sometimes, or you use a software for the first time, check to make sure your sound levels are okay as well. By the way, you also want to know where the mute button is, both in Zoom and elsewhere, to turn your microphone on and off. And there are shortcuts too, like pressing down pressing down the space bar that let you turn microphones on and off as well, as opposed to having to click on that microphone icon. Next, dress code. Personally, I treat any online meeting just as if I were meeting with people in person. Perhaps I miss some of those personal interactions, and here, let me go ahead and move myself back out just a little bit. So there I am, and centered. There we are. Let me get me the way that I like to be. Perfect. So if I were going to a meeting where I would normally wear a sport coat and a dress shirt, then I'll show up online that way. When we have a business meeting and somebody's wearing a 3-day-old t-shirt, I know that we're all working from home these days, but I, for one, like to try and replicate that sense of respect that I have for whomever it is that I'm meeting with, and that sense of professionalism. So that would be my suggestion. Next, number 8 out of 10, be on time. That's obvious. But in particular, if you're using a software that you don't know very well, you haven't used much, or maybe you haven't ever used, give yourself 5 or 10 minutes extra to try and log in. Maybe you have to download a web plugin, or you have to download the application, or you have to configure and give permission to use your microphone and your camera. So give yourself those extra 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe it means that you have to restart your computer. to make sure that you've got the software up and running and you have a chance to test it before your meeting starts. Next, number 9 out of 10, please keep your cameras on. If we're in a meeting and I have my camera on and 2 or 3 of my colleagues do, and you show up and it's like, yeah, I just don't feel like turning on my camera. It's like, oh, please turn your camera on. We've all turned our cameras on, so we're on our best behavior for the meeting. Really appreciate it if you keep yours on as well. And I try and do that too, because for me, it's a sign of respect. If your camera's on, I want to let you know that I am very present, and you get those nonverbal cues as well. Of course, for me, when I'm teaching or giving a talk or leading a workshop, I always request everybody to turn on their cameras, because that way I get the nonverbal cues that are so important. I can see people nodding. I can see if they're laughing at my jokes. Of course, my jokes aren't that funny, so when that happens, I'm very excited. I can see if they look confused or they're shaking their heads, whatever it is. So I try to make sure that their cameras are on. It gives me those nonverbal cues. And finally, my 10 out of 10, learn how to use each platform, because each platform's a little different. Where is the chat function? Can you open a chat window? How do I share screen? Can I give you co-hosting privileges? How do I record or not record? All of those are elements that are very important. So those are the things that we want to focus on. So with that, I hope that, let me stop sharing. I hope that this video has been helpful for you, that you're going to go ahead and continue to look great and be great online, and I will see you online one of these days soon.